Here's my story of how my lovely honeymoon turned into a deadly hemlock. The Hawaiian sunset painted the sky in fiery hues as Lila and I, newlyweds buzzing with excitement, stepped into our Honolulu hotel for our dream honeymoon. Our suite was everything we'd imagined: an ocean view balcony, plush furniture, and a king-sized bed, promising cozy nights. But the moment we crossed the threshold, a foul stench hit me like a punch, sour and suffocating, tainting the tropical air. Lila's nose wrinkled, her excited smile fading. "What is that?" she whispered, her voice laced with unease. I shook my head, trying to stay calm for her sake. This was our honeymoon, and I wasn't about to let a bad smell ruin it. I grabbed the phone and dialed the front desk, keeping my tone firm but polite. "Hi, this is Mark in Suite 1204. There's a really bad odor in our room. It's unbearable. Can we switch to another suite?" The manager's voice came through, dripping with apologies. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Thompson. We're completely booked. Because of a convention, no suites available." He paused, then added brightly, "But let me make it right. Lunch at any restaurant on the island on us. I'll send housekeeping up right away to fix that smell." It was a generous offer, and I glanced at Lila, who nodded despite her frustration. We headed to a beachfront bistro, savoring fresh poke and Mai Tais as the ocean breeze washed away the morning's annoyance. Over lunch, we laughed it off, determined to keep our spirits high. But when we returned to the suite, that vile odor was waiting for us, clawing at my senses like it had never left. Lila's face fell, and my stomach churned. Our dream honeymoon was teetering on the edge of a nightmare. I called the front desk again, my patience wearing thin. "The smell's still here," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "It's worse than before." The manager sounded flustered, promising to find us a room at another hotel. Minutes later, he called back, his tone heavy with defeat. "I've checked every hotel on the Strip. Everything's booked solid because of the convention, but we'll clean the room again, top to bottom. Please, give us another chance." Lila sighed, her eyes meeting mine in a silent plea to fix this. I wasn't about to let a bad smell ruin our trip. "Fine," I said. "We'll go explore for a couple of hours, sightsee, hit the casino, but when we get back, this better be fixed." While we were out, I tried to focus on the vibrant pulse of Waikiki, neon lights, the hum of slot machines, the thrill of a lucky streak at blackjack. But that stench lingered in my mind, a dark cloud over our adventure. 2 hours later, we returned, my heart hopeful, as I pushed open the suite's door. The smell hit me like a wall, relentless and rancid, worse than ever. Lila's eyes watered, and I clenched my fists, fury replacing frustration. "This is insane," I growled. "We're not sleeping in this." I'd had enough. If the hotel staff couldn't find the source, I would. "I'm done waiting," I told Lila, rolling up my sleeves. I tore through the suite like a man possessed, flipping cushions, yanking open closets, checking every corner for the culprit. The stench seemed to grow stronger, mocking me. Lila hovered nearby, her unease mirroring my own. Finally, I turned to the bed, my last resort. I gripped the heavy mattress, muscles straining as I heaved it off the box spring. Time froze. There, sprawled across the box spring, was a woman's lifeless body, her vacant eyes staring into oblivion. The stench of death flooded my senses, and Lila's scream pierced the air. I stumbled back, my heart hammering and my mind reeling. I grabbed Lila, pulling her close as we backed toward the door, our dream honeymoon shattered by the nightmare we'd just uncovered. Obviously that was scary as hell, but the climax was yet to come. The face of the dead woman looked exactly like my wife. Never trust a hitchhiker, at least I won't. My nerve-wracking experience will convince you too. The open road stretched before us, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the Georgia night. My wife, Emily, and our 3 kids, Lily, Max, and little Sophie, were nestled in the minivan, their soft snores blending with the hum of the engine. We were on an epic journey from New York to Florida, chasing the magic of Disney World. It was just past midnight, and with the kids dreaming and the highway silent, I planned to push through to save the cost of a hotel. The air was thick with a serene ambiance, the kind that makes you feel like the world is holding its breath. At 12:30 a.m., the highway was a ghost town, not a single car in sight. Then, far on the horizon, 2 crimson lights pulsed like warning beacons, not the familiar blue and red of police cruisers, but something eerie, like distress signals from a ship lost at sea. My grip tightened on the wheel as I eased off the gas, a prickle of unease creeping up my spine. Nothing about this felt right. As we drew closer, the scene came into focus. A car parked brazenly across the highway, flanked by 2 orange cones as if daring anyone to pass. 2 SOS lights flickered on the pavement, casting an ominous red glow. My heart thudded. This wasn't an accident, it was a trap. 2 figures emerged from behind the car, their hoods obscuring their faces in the moonless night. They were tall and purposeful, and as they approached, I caught their features in the dim glow. 2 African-American men, their expressions unreadable. My pulse raced. I shifted the van into reverse, ready to bolt, but one of the men was already at my window. I cracked it just enough to hear his voice, my childhood mantra echoing in my head. Never trust a stranger. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my veins. "Open the door," he said, his tone flat but laced with menace. That was all I needed to hear. I slammed the window shut as his hand dipped into his pocket. My gut screamed danger. Gun, knife, something worse. I threw the van into drive and floored it, tires screeching as we barreled over a cone and one of the SOS lights, the crunch of plastic echoing in the night. The other car loomed in my rearview mirror, its headlights flaring to life and closing in fast. Emily stirred in the passenger seat, her eyes wide with confusion. "What's going on? Why are we speeding?" "Shh," I whispered, glancing at the kids, still asleep in the back. "We're being followed. Stay quiet." The pursuing car's headlights blazed, and then, pop, a deafening blast rocked the van. The steering wheel fought me as the rear end swerved. "They shot the tires," I hissed, my heart hammering. Emily fumbled for her phone, her hands trembling as she dialed 911. Another pop. The second rear tire blew, and the van lurched, dragging against the pavement. My kids jolted awake, their cries piercing the chaos. Lily wailed, Max shouted questions, and Sophie clung to her stuffed bunny, sobbing. The car behind us wasn't done. It surged forward, ramming our bumper with a sickening crunch. Emily screamed into the phone, her voice frantic as she begged the dispatcher for help. I wrestled the van forward, its ruined tires grinding, every second a battle to keep us alive. I was sure this was it, our story ending on a desolate Georgia highway, my family's cries the last sound I'd hear. Then a miracle. Sirens wailed in the distance, and red and blue lights pierced the darkness, closing in fast. The car behind us hesitated, then peeled off into the night as police cruisers roared into view. I eased the van to a stop, my hands shaking, my breath ragged. Emily clutched my arm, tears streaming down her face, while the kids huddled together, wide-eyed. I stepped out to inspect the damage. Both rear tires were shredded, puncture marks suggesting gunshots. I relayed my suspicions to the police, who nodded grimly. 10 minutes later, a squad car and a A truck pulled up, their lights bathing us in a surreal glow. An officer approached, a grin breaking through his stern demeanor. "You're lucky," he said. "We nabbed those two. Another driver spotted their setup, turned tail, and called us just in time." Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. We were safe. The kids clung to us, their fear giving way to shaky relief. As the AA crew worked on the van, I held Emily's hand, grateful for the siren that had been our salvation. Our Disney adventure had nearly ended in tragedy, but we'd been given a second chance, and I wasn't about to take it for granted. And thank God for 911. Well, even a romantic honeymoon can turn into the sequel of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The Minnesota moon hung low over Nicollet Island, casting a silver glow across the beach where Lila and I lounged, basking in the glow of our honeymoon. The Mississippi River lapped gently at the shore, and the warm summer air wrapped us in a cocoon of bliss. We were lost in the moment, laughing and sipping drinks, when Lila excused herself to use the bathroom at the nearby pavilion. I watched her go, her silhouette fading into the dusk, unaware that our perfect night was about to unravel. When she returned, her face was pale, her eyes wide with unease. "Mark, there was this creepy guy," she whispered, clutching my arm. "He was watching me as I walked into the bathroom, and when I tried to leave, he blocked the door. I only got out because two people showed up, and he stepped aside." My stomach twisted, a surge of protective anger rising. "What did he look like?" I demanded, scanning the beach. But Lila shook her head, her voice trembling. "He's gone." Our hotel was just a short walk from the beach, and we hurried back, my eyes darting to every shadow. At the front desk, we reported the incident to a police officer stationed nearby, describing the man as best Lila could. Tall, wiry, with a hooded sweatshirt that hid his face. The officer nodded, promising to keep an eye out, but I could tell it was a long shot. Still, I felt a flicker of relief. "That scoundrel deserves to be locked up," I muttered as we headed to our room. Trying to salvage the evening, we cleaned up and strolled to a fancy seafood restaurant, where we dined on buttery lobster and crisp wine, the city's twinkling lights lifting our spirits. We wandered the vibrant streets of Minneapolis afterward, hand in hand, determined not to let fear ruin our night. By midnight, we returned to our hotel, ready to wind down in the cozy sanctuary of our suite. Then came the knock. I froze, glancing at Lila, who was brushing her hair at the vanity. The clock read 12:03 a.m., far too late for visitors. I crept to the door and peered through the peephole. A man stood outside, dressed in a maid's uniform that looked oddly ill-fitting, his face partially obscured by the dim hallway light. Unease prickled my skin, but I cracked the door open, keeping the chain locked. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice steady despite the alarm bells ringing in my head. He didn't hesitate, pushing against the door with surprising force. "I left something in the room earlier while cleaning," he said, his voice low and clipped. "I need to get it." I shoved back, my mind racing. The Do Not Disturb sign had been on our door all day. We hadn't had housekeeping. Something was wrong. Then I caught his eyes, sharp and predatory, locking onto Lila behind me. She screamed a sound that sliced through the air. "That's him!" she cried. "The man from the bathroom!" My heart lurched, but before I could react, he lunged, one hand clamping around my throat, the other reaching behind his back. A glint of steel flashed, a knife. He swung wildly, the blade grazing my arm as I stumbled back, gasping for air. Time slowed. Lila, my fierce, beautiful wife, didn't hesitate. She grabbed a heavy brass lamp from the nightstand and swung it with all her might, smashing it into the man's face. He crumpled to the floor, the knife clattering from his hand. I kicked it away, my pulse thundering as I pinned him down, my knee on his chest. The commotion erupted like a bomb. Doors flew open, and guests poured into the hallway, their gasps and shouts filling the air. A woman's piercing scream amplified the chaos, turning the scene into something straight out of a crime thriller. Lila, trembling but resolute, dialed 911, her voice steady as she relayed the attack. Within minutes, police swarmed the hotel, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow through the windows. The man, now handcuffed and sporting a bloody nose, glared at us as officers hauled him away. We answered their questions in a daze, piecing together the night's events. Other guests corroborated our story, some claiming they'd seen the man lurking around the hotel earlier. His intentions remained a mystery, but the way he'd fixated on Lila sent chills down my spine. Was he a predator, targeting her beauty? A serial killer scouting his next victim? Or just a deranged opportunist? I didn't care to know. All that mattered was that we were alive. As the police cleared the scene, Lila and I clung to each other, our honeymoon forever marked by the terror of that night. But in her courage and our survival, I found a deeper love, a bond forged in the face of danger. We'd come to Minnesota for romance, but we'd leave with a story of genuine horror and a vow to never let fear steal our joy again.
I'm sure we all drunk dialed an ass, but nothing happened to anyone what I went through. The Caribbean sun blazed over St. Martin, painting the island in vibrant hues as James and I, newly engaged and drunk on an adventure, cruising down a winding side road in our rented convertible. We were young in our 20s, and this tropical paradise was one stop on our whirlwind vacation. The road was a forgotten stretch, flanked by towering crops and untouched by signs of civilization. No houses, no shops, just the hum of our engine and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. It was a scenic detour, peaceful and quiet, but something about its emptiness set my nerves on edge. James, ever the optimist, grinned and called it our little adventure. I forced a smile, trying to shake the unease. Then we saw it. The rear end of a car jutting out from the crops, its neon blue paint chipped and rusted like a relic abandoned to the jungle. It looked wrong, as if it had veered off the road in a panic. My heart gave a little thud. "That's weird," I murmured, gripping the edge of my seat. James slowed the car, his brow furrowing. "Stay here," he said, his voice calm but firm, as he parked a safe distance away and stepped out to investigate.
I watched him circle the car, peering through its grimy windows, his posture tense. My fingers tapped nervously on the dashboard. Then he crouched down, looking under the chassis, and froze. His head snapped back, his face pale, and my stomach lurched. Something was wrong. Against his orders, I flung open the door and ran to his side, my sandals crunching on the gravel. "What is it?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Get back to the car," he hissed, but I was already dropping to my knees beside him, peering into the shadows beneath the wreck. What I saw stopped my heart. Two men crouched under the car, their eyes glinting like predators in the dim light. In their hands, large knives gleamed, slick with blood. Between them lay a body, a man, motionless, his shirt soaked crimson, a lifeless sprawl in the dirt. My scream caught in my throat, choked by terror. James grabbed my arm, yanking me to my feet and shoving me toward our car. "Move!" he barked, his voice raw with panic. I stumbled, my legs like jelly, as the men crawled out from under the car, their movements swift and menacing. They stood, knives still in hand, their faces obscured by the glare of the sun. James practically threw me into the passenger seat, diving into the driver's side just as the men started toward us, their steps deliberate. The engine roared to life, and James floored it, tires screeching as we tore down the road. I twisted in my seat, my heart pounding as I watched the men shrink in the distance, their figures swallowed by the crops. "Are they following us?" I gasped, my voice barely audible over the engine. James's knuckles were white on the wheel. "I don't see them," he said, but his eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror. We didn't stop until we reached a small gas station, the first sign of civilization after miles of desolate road. My hands shook as I dialed the police, my words tumbling out in a frantic rush. James kept watch, scanning the horizon to ensure we hadn't been followed. The police arrived quickly, their questions sharp and urgent, but I could barely process their words. The image of that bloody body, those glinting knives, was seared into my mind. Years later, the memory still haunts us. James clams up whenever St. Martin comes up, his jaw tightening, his eyes distant. I try to avoid the topic too, but it's changed me. The world feels a little darker now, the shadows a little deeper. I don't know who those men were or what drove them to such horror, but I know one thing: that quiet road, with its deceptive beauty, nearly stole our future. And trust me, I'll never drive down an empty road the same way again. After all, your shadow leaves you in the dark.
I still call it my summer of Evil Dead. That summer I turned 16. My grandparents surprised our family with a 10-day Royal Caribbean cruise to Florida and the Bahamas, a dream vacation. It was a lively crew: me, my 2 brothers, my sister Jenna and her boyfriend, my parents, my aunt and uncle, my 2 cousins, and my grandparents, all packed onto a floating paradise. I stuck close to my older brother Rob, who was 20 and the coolest person I knew. We managed to snag a stateroom together, bending the rules by claiming Dad was staying with us. The ship was a dazzling maze of pools, restaurants, and neon-lit nightlife, and I was ready to soak it all in. One night, Rob and I hit the ship's nightclub, the bass thumping through my chest. I'd snuck in with a borrowed ship ID, feeling like a rebel. The dance floor pulsed with colourful lights, but as I moved through the crowd, a chill crept up my spine. Across the room, slouched against the wall, was an older man, gaunt, with hollow eyes and a scruffy beard. His stare locked onto me, intense and unblinking, like a predator sizing up prey. I tested it, weaving through the crowd to see if his gaze followed. It did. His head turned, tracking me like a shadow. My stomach knotted, and the fun drained out of the night. I bolted for the exit, my sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. Outside, I found Jenna and her boyfriend at the bar by the deck, sipping cocktails under string lights. I slid into a seat, trying to shake off the unease. "You okay, kid?" Jenna asked, ruffling my hair. I forced a grin, but then I saw him again, the same man, now perched at a table across the bar, his eyes drilling into me. My heart raced, a cold sweat prickling my skin. I wanted to tell Jenna to point him out, but fear glued my tongue. What if I was overreacting? Instead, I mumbled an excuse and speed walked back to our stateroom, glancing over my shoulder at every turn in the labyrinthine halls. The ship, once a playground, now felt like a trap. Safely in our room, I locked the door, my pulse still hammering. A knock came later, and I froze, inching toward the peephole. It was just Rob, his goofy grin a welcome relief. I let him in, but I didn't mention the man. I couldn't explain why. Maybe I didn't want to sound paranoid. Still, the memory of those eyes haunted me as I drifted to sleep.
The next night, after a late dinner with Rob, Jenna, and her boyfriend at one of the ship's 24-hour restaurants, I decided to call it quits around 1 a.m. The others were still buzzing, planning to hit the casino, so I trekked back to our stateroom alone. The hallways were eerily quiet, the hum of the ship's engines the only sound. When I reached our door, my heart stopped. It was cracked open, a sliver of light spilling into the hall. We'd locked it, I was sure of it. No way room service was cleaning at this hour. My hand trembled as I pushed the door open, every nerve screaming to run. The room was empty. I checked the bathroom and the closets. Nothing. Our stuff was untouched, exactly as we'd left it. Maybe Rob had popped back and forgotten to lock up. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but unease gnawed at me. Exhausted, I crawled into bed, the ship's gentle sway lulling me into a restless sleep. I woke to darkness, a faint touch grazing my cheek. A hand. "Rob, knock it off," I mumbled, swatting it away. But then I saw his bed, empty. A shadowy figure loomed beside me and my blood turned to ice. I screamed a raw, blood-curdling sound that ripped through the silence. Rob jolted awake, flipping on the lamp. There he was, the man from the club, his gaunt face inches from mine, eyes gleaming with something sinister. Rob launched himself at the guy, tackling him to the floor with a flurry of punches. I scrambled out of bed, my adrenaline surging, and joined in, swinging wildly. The man grunted, struggling beneath us, but we pinned him down. Pounding on the door followed Mom and Dad, roused by my scream. Dad burst in, his face a mix of shock and fury, and took over, holding the man in a vice grip while Mom dialed the customer service center. Security arrived in minutes, their radios crackling as they cuffed the man and dragged him to the ship's brig. The hallway filled with curious guests, their whispers buzzing like static. I was shaking, my mind replaying his cold touch, his predatory stare. The ship's staff questioned us and we learned he'd been flagged for suspicious behavior before. What happened to him after the cruise, I never found out. But the memory of that night clings to me like a shadow. The open sea, once a symbol of freedom, now feels like a prison. I haven't set foot on a cruise ship since, and I don't think I ever will. Be it the modern-day Titanic